This lecture will be focusing on critics of the New Deal. Some critics of the New Deal felt that FDR did not go far enough to help the nation's poor or to reform the nation's economic system. Many liberals felt that the New Deal was very limiting. Conservatives, on the other hand, were worried about FDR's programs and their possible intervention into business. They felt that there was too much money on direct relief, that was money directly to the people, and government intervention into business, and they really felt that FDR was trying to socialize the economy. That's where the government will control certain aspects of industry. One organization that felt betrayed by FDR was the American Liberty League. This was a group of Democrats who felt that FDR had abandoned the Democratic Party's belief in a limited federal government. Some of the members were Alfred Sloan and William Knudsen of General Motors, and also John Davis and Al Smith, who were Democratic nominees for president in the 1920s. We're talking about influential Democrats here, who really felt that the Democratic Party was changing its philosophy and that FDR was the front of that. Another critic was Dr. Francis Townsend. He was the voice behind Social Security. He called for the federal government to provide $200 to all citizens over the age of 60. He very much believed that the elderly, those who couldn't work anymore or couldn't find work because of their position, needed the federal government to intervene. Another critic was Father Charles Coughlin. He got the nickname the Radio Priest. He would go on the air and do commentary about the New Deal and FDR. Though a supporter of FDR at the beginning and the New Deal program, he was one of those who felt that FDR did not do enough to end the Great Depression. Matter of fact, he called the New Deal a raw deal. Now, Father Charles Coughlin will eventually start making some anti-Semitic rants on the radio, and so the Catholic priest decided to remove him from the air. But while he was on the air, he was very powerful. The most powerful critic of the New Deal was the Kingfisher, or Huey P. Long. He was a senator from Louisiana, and he wanted the presidency. And he proposed a program called the Share Our Wealth program, where he said every family in America should get $5,000. So rather than having all these public works programs or these handouts like FARA or Social Security, instead all the taxes should be divvied out and every American should receive $5,000. This was very popular amongst Americans, and he was considered the most serious challenge to FDR until he was assassinated in 1935. Another critic of the New Deal, as we're labeling him, was Keynes. He was an economist, and he argued that deficit spending was needed to end the Depression. We couldn't just spend what the federal government brought in, which is where you keep a balanced budget. Deficit spending is where you spend more than the government brings in. And he said that we needed to prime the pump. We need to give jobs to people. These jobs would then earn them a living, so then they'd have money. They could then spend their money on products. People making those products would then keep their jobs. We'd be able to hire more people, and this would stimulate the economy. FDR is going to listen to this economist, and he is going to start engaging in deficit spending with some of his second New Deal programs in order to keep stimulating the economy. And that's what the next lecture will focus on. One more critic of the New Deal isn't really, they didn't start out as critics, but this effort by FDR will result in a lot of criticism, and that's the packing the court. The AAA, the Agricultural Adjustment Act, and the National Industrial Recovery Act were both declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. And so FDR felt that the court was going to continue to limit his New Deal programs by continuing to call them unconstitutional. So he felt that if he put a lot of supporters in the Supreme Court, that he'd be able to keep rolling his New Deal programs out. So he came up with the court packing bill. This would allow FDR to reorganize the court and appoint an additional 6 Supreme Court justices. Part of that reorganization was he wanted term limits. Right now, Supreme Court justices can be justices for life or until they retire. And he felt that there should be an age limit, that old people should not be running the court. Then he would have all the support he needed to protect New Deal programs. This didn't go through. He received a lot of criticism for it, but there were also a lot of retirements during the New Deal. So FDR was able to appoint 7 new justices to the court anyway. The next lecture will be focusing on the Second New Deal, which is the time period after the election of 1936.